Hello, it's Grammie again, and today is Chapter 8 of The Secret Window. So without further ado, let's get reading. Chapter 8, Bill's Bombshell. Meg woke late, a little cramped from her night on the living room sofa, and excited without knowing why. She sat up. Dad? She pushed the thought of him away. Linda's party? Yes, this was the day. But there was something else to think about, something more important than the party. She sniffed. A syrupy smell. What was that? Ah, then she knew. Grandma Korshak was in the kitchen making her special paper-thin pancakes, warming the maple syrup, spooning her homemade jam and boysenberry sauce into little dishes. Grandma Korshak, who had dreams that came true. That was it. That was what was making Meg's stomach do flip-flops this Saturday morning. Grandma had dreamed that Meg's father was going away, and he had gone. She had packed her suitcase and come at once, because she knew her dream was a real one. Grandma's a wonderful, normal person, Meg thought, and if she isn't crazy, well, then neither am I. She felt as if a weight had been lifted from her mind, or at least made lighter. She ran down the hall to her bedroom and scrambled through her closet for jeans and a clean shirt. There were a dozen questions she wanted to ask Grandma today. Did many of her dreams come true? Did she ever have dreams she couldn't understand? Had she had dreams when she was a little girl? Bill had come home early the night before, and there had been no more chance to talk privately with Grandma. Meg frowned, remembering how strangely her brother had acted. He had little to say, but he wanted to be with Grandma and Meg anyway. Meg waited impatiently for him to tell Grandma his great news about the scholarship, but when she tried to tell it herself, he shook his head at her sharply. Eventually, her mother had come out of her bedroom to fix dinner. Her hair was combed and her nose powdered, and she smiled determinedly when she came into the kitchen. "Telling your grandmother the good news?" she asked at once, so Bill had to talk about it. But how briefly, almost disinterestedly, he had described the contest and the award. Meg's frown deepened as she brushed her hair back behind her ears. Bill must have been terribly depressed all day, as she had been, thinking about her father on the Marquette bus. Maybe he wasn't able to feel good about anything right now. Out in the kitchen, her grandmother scurried around like a dark, contented elf in the morning sunshine. "You're hungry, I can tell," she announced as soon as she saw Meg. "Sit down and eat. We have enough pancakes to feed a crowd, so you have to be very hungry." She motioned toward the table where the others were already eating. Bill looked solemn, but he ate busily. No one could resist Grandma Korshak's pancakes. Their mother sat like a child, her feet closed together, her face weary but not particularly sad. Meg felt a wave of love for her grandmother who, with her gentle ways and expert cooking, could make them all feel safe and cared for, at least for a little while. She sat down and let Grandma stack several pancakes on her plate. "1 for strawberries, 2 for boysenberries," Meg chanted, "and 3 for maple syrup," Grandma finished. It was their private joke, going back as far as Meg could remember. She wondered what her father was having for breakfast in Marquette. "What are you doing today, Ma?" Bill asked abruptly. "Your grandmother and I are going downtown to look for shoes. We both need them." A glance passed between the two women, and Meg knew her mother was sorry for the way she had spoken the night before. She wouldn't say so, but Grandma Korshak understood. "I'm going to get ready for the party," Meg offered. "Wash my hair, iron my yellow pants, stuff like that." "What party?" Her mother seemed startled. "What are you talking about?" Meg looked at her. "Don't you remember when Gracie came home with me after school to ask if I could go? She should have guessed that her mother hadn't been thinking about anything but the quarrel. What if she said no to the party now? Linda Bell's slumber party, Meg said. Her mother sent you a note and you read it right here in the kitchen? No need to take that tone, her mother shrugged. I suppose it's all right, as long as you're properly chaperoned. Since Mrs. Bell wrote the note, I'm sure. All right. Her mother turned to Bill. And you'll be at the superette all day as usual? Almost as usual. Bill scooped up a last bite of pancake and strawberry jam. I'm taking off a little early to see about a new job, Ma. There's an opening for a clerk at Thompson's Auto Supply, and I want to try for it. Do they need someone just for the summer? You'll have to tell them you'll be leaving to go to the university in September. Bill took a deep breath. Thing is, he said, I've changed my mind about going on to school right now. I mean, I'd rather get a job and see how things go. No big deal, he added hastily as their mother gave a little gasp of dismay. I talked to my advisor yesterday and told him I didn't think I'd be using the scholarship. It's nice. I'm proud to have won it all, but the scholarship isn't the biggest thing that ever happened. The world stopped right then. Grandma Korshak sank into a chair and stared at Bill. Meg's mother looked dazed. You're kidding, said Meg. You have to be. Bill glared at her. I'm not kidding. I've been thinking about it ever since, for a couple of days. We're going to need more money coming in around here. When Dad was home, there was always the chance he might get a regular job, but now, he looked at his mother. Don't cry, Ma. It's not that important. Not important? His mother wiped her eyes. It's everything. How can you say it's not important? Bill pushed back his chair and stood up. I have to get to work, he said. Let's talk about it later. Great pancakes, Grandma. He bent and kissed their mother on the top of her head, then hurried out. He'll get over this idea, Grandma Korshak said. He's a good boy and he wants to do the right thing. Just give him time to think it out. But if he turns down the scholarship, Meg's mother was horrified. They'll give it to someone else. This is the only chance he'll have. Grandma reached for the coffee pot and refilled the cups. Just give him time, she said again. It'll be all right. Do you really believe that? Grandma nodded, but she looked worried. Bill was stubborn. If he believed his help was needed at home, he would turn down the scholarship and no one would be able to stop him. Wait till Dad hears that. Yeah, Meg thought, maybe writing is his life, but he's going to feel awful, just awful, if Bill doesn't go to college. The breakfast dishes were washed, and her mother and Grandma Korshak had left on their shopping trip before Meg remembered the question she wanted to ask her grandmother. I have to talk to her alone, she thought. I just have to. Gracie called 4 times while Meg was washing her hair, packing her overnight bag, and doing her regular Saturday housekeeping chores. It's going to be so much fun, Gracie said, sighing. I just can't wait until tonight. Meg felt the same way, but not for the same reason. Her mother and grandmother came home around noon, and the 3 of them had a strained and silent lunch. Afterward, Grandma said she was going to take a nap. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she shuffled as she went down the hall to the bedroom. Grandma says everything is going to be all right, but she's really scared, just like we are, Meg thought. As much as she wanted a private talk with her grandmother, she realized it would have to wait. At 6 o'clock, Bill hadn't returned. It was nearly time for Meg to meet Gracie. Your grandmother and I will have our dinner when he comes. Meg's mother lifted a casserole from the oven and spooned a generous helping onto a plate. Eat, she ordered to Meg. If this slumber party is like the ones I used to go to, you'll be up all night stuffing yourselves with nothing but junk food. She looked at Meg with a wistful expression. It was fun, she said. I'm glad you're going. Brookfield Avenue was hushed and silvery when Meg stepped out into the warm evening. She was surprised to see Bill on the steps, his dark head next to Rhoda's auburn one. Neither of them had heard her coming. "You'll be sorry," Rhoda was saying. "I don't mean just because you'll lose your scholarship. That's bad enough, but you'll be sorry because it's a really dumb thing to do. Take my word for it." Meg cleared her throat. "Mama and Grandma are waiting for you upstairs," she said, trying not to sound as if she were butting in. "Did you get the job at the auto supply store?" Bill stood up. "I won't know till next week," he said shortly. "I'd better go up. Mustn't keep the ladies waiting." "Listen," Rhoda put up a hand. "I've got a thing to tell you. It'll just take a minute." Bill glanced at Meg then and winked. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and sat down on the steps again. "Tell away, ma'am." Rhoda ignored his teasing tone. "It's about what I did when my mother moved to Los Angeles," she said. "That was the worst time in my life. I didn't know how to act. At first I cried and moped around, and then I got mad. I decided to get even with my mother for dropping out of our family." "How?" Bill looked interested. "I dropped out too. I quit school." "You couldn't do that," Meg protested. "People can't just quit because they feel like it." Rhoda went on as if she hadn't heard. "Every morning I left when my father did and went to the zoo or a movie, or I just wandered around the shopping center near our house. I did that for nearly 2 weeks. She paused, remembering what it was like. "So what happened?" Bill asked. "So the school kept calling my father, and I kept telling him there was some mix-up in the office. Finally, they convinced him that I wasn't in school and they wanted to know what was going on. And after that, he took me right to the school door every morning before he went to work, like a prisoner. But there was a counselor." Rhoda hunched forward, and her husky voice softened. "A really neat person. We talked every day, and once she said, 'Tell me what you thought about when you weren't coming to school.' I told her I thought about how lonely I was and about how far behind I was getting in all my classes. She had said, 'That doesn't sound like much fun. What else did you think about?' And I told her I thought about how rotten my mother would feel if she knew her only child was walking around a shopping center instead of going to school. But of course my mother didn't know anything about it, and the counselor said it sounded like a pretty boring couple of weeks. And all of a sudden, I knew she was right. Quitting school wasn't what I wanted at all. The only person feeling rotten was little old Rhoda." She leaned back and looked at Bill with an elfin grin. "That's all," she said. "You better go eat now." "Interesting story," Bill said. He stood up and turned to go inside, almost bumping into Meg. "Have a good time at the party," he said, and Rhoda repeated the words as Meg brushed past them both. "I will," she replied with more force than was really necessary. She hurried toward the corner without looking back. It was pretty irritating to realize that Rhoda Deal might understand Bill and influence him when he wouldn't even listen to his own family. Boys, she thought. And then, remembering the thoughtful expression on her brother's face, she decided she couldn't be jealous of Rhoda. She was a smart girl, and after all, it really didn't matter who said the right words to Bill, as long as he heard them. That's all for Chapter 8. So, when we get together the next time, we'll read Chapter 9. I hope you're enjoying The Secret Window. So, until we see each other again, Grammie says, ta-ta for now.